Itai Kafri is VP of Product Growth at Voyantis.
How do you get your dollars to drive the best users in the most efficient way? 2014, something big happened. That thing was back then called OCPM. OCPM at its core took over the bidding. Some people don't really understand how big of a change that was, and it's still walking us through this same narrative. Many marketers would think that CPA is designed for volume, ROAS is designed for value. I think that's a misconception because ROAS is not optimizing towards value. It's optimizing towards short-term, observable revenue.
The Art of Commerce is a podcast featuring conversations on creativity and conversions. Hosted by Anish, a data-obsessed creative director, and Jinx, a growth-obsessed CMO. Listen on for actionable insights for the modern marketer.
Thinking of the food app example, right, and that got me reflecting on my own personal spending and habits. I also realized that I'm a very seasonal customer, Like usually I'll spend a lot on these food apps in Q4. And that makes me think, am I a valuable customer to a food app in Q4 and not so much for the rest of the year? And by an extension of that thought, does the definition of your ICP or the ideal customer change throughout the year for these different brands? And how flexible are they with the definition of that ideal customer, with seasonality baked in?
So, I'll ask you a quick question here. When you said that you're a seasonal kind of user, is it because of this app that you're using drives more value in certain times of the year? Like say, for example, a travel app, maybe I am seasonal on a travel app because I use it a lot more during the summer than during the winter. So, it raises a question of if it's something that's on the user level that we need to see if there are some users that are seasonal, or is it the behavior or the characteristic of the app itself? And in both cases, it's something that you definitely want to address. So, again, if you're an app developer and an advertiser, to answer that question of who's a good user, you want to look 12 months into the history, find the users that were the top performing users. Look at your deciles, right? The top performing decile, the second to top performing decile, the third to top performing decile. And look at those users and try to find what makes them successful for you. Not in terms of the characteristics, because if you don't use AI, you're never going to get an answer to that. It's too difficult. But in terms of how do I define them as successful? Is it because they used my top tier program and retained for a long time? Is it because they made many, many different purchases and I'm happy with that, behavior? Is it because they shared it with a ton of their friends and that's what I'm looking for? And that's what I'll call a top performing user. So, look at that and define what is top performing for you based on their behaviors.
Okay, so now sounds like a lot of success in this aspect as well. It's just getting a really good idea of what we are going after. Okay, so let's say the marketer in this case has understood the right signals that define success for them. Hey, it's a trial instead of a subscription, right? You have defined your ideal customer for that period. Now all this talk about what Voyantis does has really got me thinking. I'm sure Jinx, you as well as our listeners too, is how do you do it? How do you decide and find out which customers are high value before the value is even fully realized, before that action has been taken?
So I'm going to take your question and broaden it again, and then answer specifically what you asked. How do we do it is not only how do we know who's the best user, it's how do we actually drive uplift in your performance, which is a twofold solution. We have to predict the user, which is what I'm going to answer in a moment because that's a question you asked. And then we need to activate a signaling strategy to make it happen, which is a practice that we call signal engineering. And that's a long conversation, so I'll leave it aside for a moment. Let's park it and let's go back to the prediction. As for the prediction, you know what? Even that, I want to break it down. I want to start about talk about predictions in general. Like, how do you build, a machine learning engine that predicts user value? And many advertisers out there, or many companies out there, have their LTV models in place. So let's talk about how a typical LTV model operates, and then I'll mention a few things that are a little bit unique about what, for what we do. But generally speaking, the idea is that AI thrives when it has an abundance of its own signals, right? When it has let's not confuse the word signal. I'm going to use that to what we send to the channel. So let's say abundance of information and data points, right? And that what AI needs in order to operate. And so when you build this machine learning, prediction engine, you want to make sure that you're giving it everything that you can on the users. And so it would be, every action they take within the app. Did they upload a profile picture? Let's take a gaming example just for the sake of kind of sparking the imagination. If you have an action in your game, an event in your game called avatar select, select an avatar. That's great for the prediction model, but what's better is how many swipes did I make until I selected that avatar? Because a user just selected that first one, just default, is from a prediction perspective, is extremely different than one that actually searched for that perfect avatar for themselves. So you want to give this machine learning every piece of information that you theoretically can. It will know on its own what's important and what's not. And then you need to give it a target prediction. What is it that you want it to predict? So then the machine will look at, you defined high value as 90-day LTV. Great. So the machine will look at all these users. Each user has, looking at historical data. So each user already has their 90-day LTV in place. And then the machine will start looking at patterns, early behavior patterns, what these users did in their first hour, second hour, third hour, and so on. And within these patterns, it will start creating correlations between, if a user does this, this, and that, this combination of events or this combination of behaviors, this user is probably going to be worth X or Y or Z. Or the probability of this user to perform a certain action is going to be 90%, 30%, 60%, 20%. And that's the essence, right? Now, the goal of this machine is to try to minimize the average error. That's what the machine is trying to do, to reach a high quality prediction, minimizing the average error. And that's how it works. However, with all that being said, we found that when you want to take that prediction as is within this format and send it to the channel, it doesn't work well. And I'm still not going to talk about the signal. I'm still going to talk about the prediction. The prediction engine itself needs to be tailored for paid media marketing. And this is going to be, I'm going to try to keep this discussion high level and not dive too deep, and not go into data science here, but let's think about this really, in the most intuitive way. Because this machine is trying to achieve minimal errors, it pulls the results into the average. So when you look at everything, zoom out, the top edge of your user base are going to be pulled a little bit closer. The prediction is going to underpredict on them. And the low end, the prediction is going to overpredict on them. Now, when you look at the average error, it's going to be great because it averages out. But when you work with a channel and you want to use this for a signal, you can't compromise on something like this. You actually want to see the edge cases. You're not building a prediction model that minimizes errors or minimizes the average error rate. You're building a prediction model that is designed for ranking and activation. So it's designed to rank the users amongst themselves, and then it's very important that you don't do this kind of pull into the mean. So and that's just one tiny example. I'll give another example on why this prediction engine needs to be different. Actually, I have so many examples. I'm trying to limit myself. hold myself back. But another example is that if your prediction engine, over predicts here, under predicts there, average, everything's good, right? But for when you want to use this as a signal, if you over predict for your low end users, you are signaling to the channel that they are worth more than they are. And the channel, by nature, is trying to drive the easiest users for you, or the easiest conversions for what you're looking for. And if you over predict on those, it'll bring you a lot of these because they're closer to the low end, and they're worse than what you told the channel. So you need to, when you build this prediction model, you need to figure out that if you're over predicting on that side, it's not too bad. But if you're over predicting on this side, you need to penalize the model. It needs to be baked into the model. And then the last piece is this model needs to be reactive. It needs to be, you can't train a model like you would for your, if you're building a model for your CFO for forecasting, it can be fairly stable for a long time. It's fine because it averages things out. But this one is a model that drives changes because it's activated. So once you launch a campaign using your model, you're changing the user mix. By definition, that's what you want to do. You're doing that on purpose, right? You're changing the user mix, and that may have consequences on your model. So it needs to be an adaptive model that constantly learns and and works with the dynamics of the auction.
Well, what about memory? Does the model retain the changes that were made and for what reasons? As it is reacting over time?
The word reason is not something that the model cares about. It looks at cause and effect, right? So yeah, but the model is reacting to changes. I'll use terms that are well known in the industry, right? At least in the space of AI, there's a term called drift. So you built a model, and this model is now predicting a user value. And when you get to the horizon, let's take short horizons. Say I'm predicting this user's value in 10 days. When I reach those 10 days, I look at the value and the actual, did it match, right? Am I correct? Am I accurate? And if the gap between the prediction and the actual value grows, it means that your model is drifting. And why would it drift? Well, the consumer behavior changed, maybe even something outside of your environment. Maybe a competitor came in and poured, gazillion dollars into the auction, and it changed the user mix because of him. And so you may need to retrain that model again and again for all kinds of different reasons. So a model that is built for this purpose, it's changing the user mix and the auction is changing. And so it needs to learn from this. Drift happens faster in these models, especially the beginning, right? They just drift faster. So it's just a unique characteristic of a model that is being activated for this purpose. And then let's not forget, right? Even once you have an accurate model, there is a big piece that comes afterwards, which is how do you transform the predictions into signaling strategies for the channel, which is a big, big piece. That signal engineering piece.
So you made a lot of good points around how the kind of what Voyantis does, what it's bringing to the channel, what the flaws or limitations, I should say, of the channels are today, and how you're trying to overcome them. But fundamentally, we always talk about people, process, technology. We've been talking a lot about the technology, but from a process people perspective, where do brands get stuck, right, as they're implementing this? Because yeah, sure, we love it, it's a great idea, high value, duh, but what happens when the rubber meets the road, and why did the tires get stuck in the mud, to keep that analogy going?
So there are different reasons for this to happen, and I'll give some examples from what I've seen. It reminds me of a story. I was invited as a speaker to an event that Meta hosted. This was not an event for the marketers. It's not for the media buyers. This event the headline of the event was LT Vision Bootcamp. LT Vision is an open source tool that Meta released designed to help you understand what kind of value you would gain if you go into the LTV space. So it's an analysis tool, but you need to connect it to your data. It needs to whoever uses this tool has to be an analyst that has some coding experience, maybe a data scientist as well. It's not for the marketer; it's for the maybe data analytics or marketing analytics team. So the audience in this room are people who have an intimate relationship with data analytics and prediction models. The first, the host that opened up the event, one of her questions right at the beginning was, raise your hand if you at your company have a prediction model in place. And, I didn't count the hands, but about 50% of the people had their hands in the air.
I have two of mine.
which, by the way, was a surprise for me. I thought that it would be less. But yeah. And so you're in there, right? And then the next question she asked was, how many of you have successfully implemented your prediction model into your media strategy? Zero hands were in the air, which was the second surprise I had on that day. So first off, I thought less people would have a prediction model in place. And second, if 50% of the people here have a prediction model, I would expect at least one of them to have something activated that's working. No. And this goes, so you asked me, where do they get stuck? Right? That's the question you're asking. And I think that there are two main reasons. People who build prediction models are data scientists. They are way smarter than I am, and they can build an amazing prediction model. However, in some cases, they don't have the intricacy, the nuanced knowledge that the APIs need for this activation to drive value. And as I mentioned earlier, the prediction model itself needs to be purposely designed for this. And then the second reason is, and this is from a call that I had today with a potential client that is looking at us. They asked us, they're stuck in the mud because of the question they asked. I know this. So they asked, as we started the presentation, we were really at the beginning, and they asked, do you add a transformation layer on the prediction before you send it as a signal? Which goes to the second topic, that signal engineering. So not only that you need to have a prediction model that makes sense, you also need to translate it, engineer it into a signaling strategy because it's probabilistic and not deterministic. And that brings a whole list of questions that maybe people don't think about. And if you don't think about it or don't answer or don't deliberately answer that question, you're still answering it, just uneducated, right? You're just answering it by default.
That's super.
I think a common theme here, based on everything Itai has been saying, is Jinx. It all boils down to the art of the query. Are you asking the right questions? Are you looking at the right signals to take the right action?
And are you
without that lens?
And are you translating it in niche? That's I think that was the last part that hit me, because I thought Itai was going to say, "Oh, the problem, you have these really smart guys, but they don't really understand the nuance of the customer." But that's not actually the case. It's actually the nuance of the platform that needs to be transformed. So that's fantastic.
They know their clients. If you hire a team of data scientists that have been working here with you, I'm going to use the same data that they use when I build a prediction model for them. It's the exact same data. So it's just that we know how to do it for the purpose of, right? I talked about this in kind of just touched it, but I want to give, when we talk about this transformation layer, and I said it's not deterministic, it's probabilistic, and it brings questions to the table. I'll just want to give one teaser as a question that why do I treat this differently? If a user went into my website and bought a TV at $100, you send an event $100. If a user is predicted to be worth $100, send an event $100, you're done, right? But no, it doesn't work this way. And why doesn't it work this way is because these channels have evolved around deterministic. And let's talk for 1 second about what's the difference between a deterministic event and a probabilistic event. A probabilistic event, it doesn't say this user is worth $100. A probabilistic event says, based on the information we have right now, we think this user will be worth $100 in, say, 30 days at a confidence level of, 62%. That's the prediction model. And now when I break it down like this, it suddenly says, okay, so if I predict that same user again tomorrow, the confidence level is going to go up because I have more data on the user, right? And because of that question, you suddenly ask yourself, wait, so now I know that these channels want very early signals. They need quick turnaround. I want to fall within the 1-day conversion window if I can, within 24 hours if I can. But then if I predict the user value within an hour, the confidence level may just not be there yet. It may be a little bit too low. So how do I now balance? How do I know when I can send this signal in a way that I'm trying to do it as early as I can, but I'm not misleading the channel in any way? And so what most companies do, and here's another place where sometimes they get stuck, they just define an average. They say, okay, I looked at all my, if I wait 4 days, then by day 4, I get a pretty good, in average, I get a pretty good prediction, pretty stable prediction. So let's just do it, cut it, slice it, and say the prediction model spits out a prediction after 4 days. That's how they'll do it. And what we would do is we say, no, we understand this is a challenge here. Let's predict every user, every hour, and for every one of the outputs, let's look at the confidence level in every individual output for every individual user and figure out per user on a user level when to send this. And not only that, I also want to do that with respect to the different channels, because as Facebook is less forgiving than Google, because in Facebook I can't update downwards, whereas in Google I can update up or down. So now I need to be also respectful for this specific user, how much confidence I have, when can I send it, and the channel. And that way we constantly keep it as early as possible without misleading.
I love that, because we always talk about like average. When you work on averages, you're going to get average results, right? Like it's not, you can't work that way. So you're actually talking about the holy grail, which is like literally targeting at the 1-to-1 level and saying this customer is going to do this. So this is how we're going to treat this customer, which is again, the holy grail. That's where we want to be.
The holy grail, yeah.
So let's shift a little bit, because we kept talking about stuck in the mud. Let's talk about, and you don't have to name any names. You talked about some dining apps and things like that, but you don't have to name names. But like, what are the brands that are not stuck in the mud, but they're lifting off in outer space, and so what are they benefiting the most from? What are you seeing? And give the audience what's that aha moment when they're like, oh yeah, this is really working?
So there are a few things. The first one is the simplicity. The part of this aha moment is I'm a little bit biased because I'm assuming they use our services. I don't know what the aha moment is for if they're doing it on their own, because it's going to be costly and a long project. But we take the heavy lifting on ourselves. So how much work do you need to put as an advertiser to make this happen? Well, you need to work for a week with your data engineering team to give us access to your data. Once we have access to your data, then you need to work with us. The growth team needs to work with us, on a few meetings to define how to run this test, which campaign, what the budget, what the success factor, and so on. And then we launch an A/B test. And at the end of the A/B, and when we launch this A/B test, think about the advertiser side. All they need to do is launch a control and an experiment, where the experiment, the only difference is they selected a different event and events manager. That's all. From an operational side, there's nothing. So the simplicity is one aha moment. And the other is how much of an impact this has. And in order to not to, in order to make it tangible for people to understand, it's anywhere between, 15 to 40% uplift. These are big numbers. How do we get to these big numbers? It's not a surprise when you think about it, because if you were in the past optimizing towards CPM and then you move to CPI, your cost per install improved dramatically. If you transitioned from CPI to ROAS, your ROAS or CPI to CPA, you saw an immediate, measure the CPA, launch a CPI campaign and look at your CPA. Then launch a CPA campaign and look at a CPA. It's going to be much, much, much better by far, not by a marginal, it's going to be significant. And so when you're launching a CPA campaign today and looking at ROAS 90 days, you get some average. But when you launch a 90-day ROAS campaign, because you're using a prediction, you're going to see a significant difference. And so those are the aha moments I think that I would highlight.
That's awesome, and the fact that you're able to enable that with brands is just awesome.
And I'm sure as more of your clients experience these aha moments, this is bound to have an impact on the teams too, right? Have you seen this success change the relationship between finance, marketing, and product?
Actually, yes. Yeah, it's I asked you earlier. We talked about how do you define a good user, right? So I'm gonna nail it down right now. There are different languages within the organization. People speak in different languages. If you ask the board or the CFO what success looks like, in many cases they can care less what a CPA is, and their language is going to be my payback period, right? That's kind of the give or take something around that area. Whereas if you ask the product manager what does success look like, they're going to say, well, success for me is people using my premium features. I want high usage of the premium feature, and that's their success, right? And then you ask the growth marketer what success looks like for them, and they're going to say, well, success for me is hitting my target CPA. Right? 3 different languages, the same question. And now you're asking me, how it changes the dynamics within the organization a little bit. It aligns the languages. And so let's take those 3 answers again. We will use the engagement of the top features in your product as inputs, right? So if these really are premium features that indicate on the user's lifetime value, we will use them. So that language is aligned now with, and then we'll go to the CFO and ask them, what is your best user? And he's going to say, I need to shorten my payback period. Right now it's 60 days. I want it to be 30 days. So now we know that is a success criteria that the organization is really looking at. And I'm bringing that to the marketer and telling the marketer, here's an event that is aligned with your organization's business goals. Now you can optimize towards that, and your measurement is no longer a CPA. It may be, LTV to CAC ratio, which is the return or the payback period, but it's the same. Now we're talking the same language. So actually, it's a strategic change in the marketer's eyes. If I were a marketer, I would want to grow my strategic influence on the organization to a place where my work is connected directly to the measurement of success that the entire organization is looking at. That would have been my goal if I were in that position right now.
That's amazing. We talked about it on the podcast too, like one, finances should be the marketer's best friend, because that's how you run a business. And we also talk about the fact that marketers should be less focused on CPA or their micro goals and really be thinking about holistic business value. So the fact that Voyantis is bringing that together and helping teams talk like that is awesome. Like that, you're just, what a great message for the marketing teams that listen here.
Yeah, and if I try to summarize this whole big story, I mean, we talked for, I don't know, altogether close to an hour, right? If I try to take that whole story and really crystallize that whole thing end to end, you're currently limited with your optimization efforts to a short conversion window, which does not reflect your top performing users. In order to challenge that, you can't change the short conversion window, but you can do some amazing things. So what you can do is you can create predictive events. And so you need a prediction engine, create those predicted events. I'm telling to the entire audience, all the listeners here, if you're headed that way on your own, that's a great practice. Listen to this podcast, not to fall in those traps of building a generic prediction engine and so on and so on. And so you build that prediction engine, and then you apply a transformation layer on top of it that is reactive to the dynamics of the auction, and that understands that once you implement this, the auction will change on you, and it needs to be dynamic. And that transformation layer is designed with a sole purpose to think about signals, not to think about predictions, right? How do you signal things to the channel to make it work? And once you have all that in place, you're golden.
Awesome.
This was a master class, not just in AI technologies and what's possible, but also in digital advertising.
Yeah.
Thank you for the great insights, Itai.
Yeah, Ty, you're the man. This is amazing. We are at time, but if we could take you for one more minute, we always do a lightning round with our guests. We'd love to do a lightning round with you if you're open to it. Is that cool?
Yeah, 100%.
All right, cool. Awesome. All right. So, okay, first, what's the one metric you think marketers obsess over too much?
Short-term metric. So CPA or ROAS, either one.
Leading the witness. Maybe another leading the witness, but I'll give you another one. So what's the one metric you think they should be focused on?
Great question. I think it should be around the LTV to CAC ratio, which is equivalent to ROAS on a long-term scale.
You are singing our language. This is what we guys on all the time. And this goes back to what I said at the beginning, which is they're not bad customers, they're bad investments. And this is a good way to pressure test if you're making bad investments. Okay, you said it in the upfront. You said it a little bit earlier in the podcast. You used to work for TikTok before you came to Voyantis. What's your favorite TikTok dance?
Oh my God. Oh my God. That's a tough one. I'll tell you one that I tried with my wife, and I was so horrible that we never uploaded it anywhere. But there was one that you, with the feet, that you do a couple together, and you need to tap your feet and with one another, and kind of like, dude, I am so bad at these things. That I would, I'm embarrassed to say that I a lot of I look at them, but every time I try them and I look at the video of what just happened here, that's not for me.
Okay, all I'm saying is this is a video podcast, so if you want to send us that video, we can just play it here just to give some color.
Even if you pay me, no, that's not leaving. That's not happening.
Well, that's all right. Anyway, that's all right. Thank you so much for being a good sport. Anish said it best. This is a masterclass, not just on AI and machine learning, but also how you actually execute the platform and actually how you think about cross-team and speak the language of finance and think about your customer holistically and think about your business holistically. So Itai, thank you so much. For those listening, this is Itai Kafri, is the VP of Product Growth at Voyantis. Please check them out. They follow Itai, first of all, wealth of knowledge on LinkedIn, but also follow Voyantis. They have a bunch of white papers about value-based bidding and the AI work they do. And they have a bunch of webinars where they talk about this in a lot more depth and focused in on the technology they have. So please check them out. And then for us, this is the Art of Commerce. So please subscribe, rate, share the episode, tell your friends, send a TikTok dance. We're open to it, and Anish, anything you want to send us out with?
Yes, send this episode to your favorite digital marketer. Okay, they will learn a lot and they will thank you for it. And we will see you the next week with a kick-ass episode. You have no idea what's coming out next week because partly we have no idea what's coming out next week, but it will be a kick-ass episode. So we'll see you next time. Subscribe.
Awesome, guys. Have a great one.
This is The Art of Commerce, featuring conversations on creativity and conversions. If you found value in today's episode, follow the show, leave a review, and stay tuned for more insights for the minds reshaping modern marketing.